Good afternoon. My name is Francesco Prota from University of Bari in Italy. The title of the paper I'm going to present is Which Domestic Firm Benefit from FDI? Evidence from Selected African Countries. As you can see, it's a joint paper with Amadou Boli and Adnan Seric from UNIDO and my colleague from my same university, Nicola Coniglio. So let me start by clarifying the aim of this paper. The aim is, first of all, to analyze the characteristics of domestic firms that either gain or lose from the presence of multinational firms in their home markets. And the second aim of this paper is to analyze the strategic reaction of these firms due to the presence of these multinational firms in their home market. So the outline of my presentation is there. I'll give you the motivation for this paper. Then I briefly describe the methodology and data we use. Then I move to the results and I give you some conclusive remarks, some policy implication of our analysis. So why this paper? The first reason is due to the fact that even if the presence of the FDI stock in Africa is still of limited size, in the last years, the inflows are increasing and moreover are becoming less concentrated, even if you consider the FDI from a geographical point of view and from a sectoral point of view. And another interesting features is the significant expansion of South-South FDI. As you can see from the table, you have a reduction in the greenfield FDI coming from developed economies, if you consider the year 2010 and 2011. While you have an increase in the FDI coming from developing economies. I guess in the previous section, you have a paper on South-South FDI in this same room. The effect of FDI on the host economies are very diversified, and we can summary 4 main channels. We can have an indirect effect, and this is on the endowment and productivities of factor of production. You can have forward and backward linkages. We have seen 2 papers on that a few minutes ago. You can have a competitive and demonstration effect, and you can have knowledge transfer and externalities. So you have different channels. The existing literature has mainly focused on spillover and externalities. But spillover are not easy to measure. And there is, strong critique to the econometric approach that the vast majority of studies have adopted to measure these backward and forward linkages. So the analysis is moving from spillovers to linkages. Linkages are a sort of prerequisite to have spillovers, but at the same time they are beneficial for the domestic firms, even if you don't have spillover. In the specific case of the sub-Saharan Africa, you see that you have few linkages and even fewer spillovers. Different reasons can explain this result. First of all, the low absorptive capacities of domestic economies. The second is a sort of wrong type FDI. This is concerned the sectoral composition of this kind of FDI. So they are concentrated mainly in the primary sector, and this kind of FDI are less likely to produce spillover. And the third possible explanation for that result is an Africa effect, a negative Africa effect. That is, the high corruption and political instability of the continents make difficult to have this spillover effect. The data we use for our paper are from the Africa Investor Surveys conducted by UNIDO. It's a very huge data set at firm level, and we have data on 7,000 domestic and foreign firms across 19 sub-Saharan Africa. The sectors covered by this database are agriculture, mining, manufacturing, and services. So, starting with this data, our paper adopt a different approach compared with the existing literature. In that sense, we use the firm's self-assessment of the beneficial they receive from the presence of a multinational enterprise in their own market. So we can identify firms that self-declared as winner from the presence of the multinational in their own market, and firms that, excuse me, and the firms that self-declared as loser from the presence of multinational firms in their own market. I mean, this paper is in line with heterogeneous firm literature, trade literature, and at the same time is in line with the new strands of literature based on attitude of individuals towards globalization phenomenon. I mean, there are several works by Roderick and Maida, Facchini and Maida on that kind of literature. So we depart from the previous literature in this respect. The first research question is therefore, what are the characteristics which increase the probability for the domestic firms to be a net winner or to be a net loser from the presence of multinational firms in their domestic market? I mean, the theory and the empirical studies predict that FDI inflow have highly heterogeneous effects on domestic firms. So, at the same time, the characteristics of the firms and the macroeconomic environment in which both firms, domestics and foreign firms, operate can determine if the domestic firms are net winners or net losers from the presence of foreign affiliates. As you can see, we perform a probit model where our dependent variable is a dummy variable. We construct from the question, you can see there, the question obviously from the questionnaire of the UNIDO survey. And we classify a firm as net winner if the answer to that question is slightly positive or strongly positive. So in this case, the firm is saying, okay, I receive benefits from the presence of multinational in my country. On the contrary, the firm is a net loser if the answer is strongly negative or slightly negative. This table summarizes the response from the different countries. As you can see, the 34% of firms say that they are winner from the presence of multinational in their own market. 25% say that they are loser from the presence of MNEs in their own market, while 40% declares that there is no effect on their business, on their own business from the presence of multinational. But if you look at the countries, you can see that this is highly heterogeneous. For example, in Mozambique, you have a very high percentage of firms declaring that they are they receive benefits from the presence of multinationals. And on the opposite side, you have Lesotho, where the percentage is less than 80%, 8% of firms. So, as I said, we perform this probit model. First, we consider only the firm characteristics, and then we include the destination countries covariates. So, starting from this analysis, you can see that the probability of experiencing positive net effect are larger, more likely for firms that are larger and more productive. This is in line with the prediction of the literature. Is larger for newly established firms, and sometimes is more likely for firms that have an upstream market orientation, and for manufacturing firms which have long-term foreign suppliers. The last point is very interesting because it highlights how important are linkages for domestic firms to get benefit from the presence of multinational firms. The other factors, highlight how the firms that are, newly established and more productive, they are the firms that that are more likely to be beneficial from the presence of multinational firms. As I said, also the macroeconomic environment is important, and it's important for two reasons. First, because they directly increase the probability for firms to be beneficial from the presence of multinational firms, and also indirectly because the macroeconomic environment select the presence of multinational firms. So better is the macroeconomic environment of the country, more, I can say, the presence, more qualified is the presence of FDI, both in terms of quantity and in terms of quality in the countries. And therefore, they increase the probability for domestic firms to get benefits from the presence of multinational. We add all this control, all these destination country covariates, and what the results say. The results say that firms are more likely to be winners from FDI interaction in relatively less developed countries. This is quite interesting because it seems to confirm the idea that bigger is the technological gap of the countries, more likely is the possibility to get benefits from the presence of multinational firms. At the same time, having a larger manufacturing base as well as having a larger presence of FDI increase the probability for the firms to be net winners from the presence of multinational firms. At the same time, a good business environment also helps, and a better access to foreign market is associated with net gain for firms, for domestic firms. This first step of the analysis is about the overall impact for the domestic firms from the presence of multinational enterprise in their own market. But at the same time, we can look into specific channels of interaction. And we can see how the characteristics that explain if firms are winners or losers change when we consider different channels of interaction. In more detail, we consider three possible channels of interaction. market demand, cost and availability of factors of production, skilled labor, intermediate inputs and raw materials, as well access to finance, and access to foreign market. In this last case, the idea is that foreign firms might play a role of a bridge to foreign markets. They can facilitate the presence of domestic, 5 minutes, okay, of domestic firms in the foreign market. Looking at these three specific channels, probably it's too small, but by the way, we can see how the same covariates we employed in the first step of the analysis play a different role when we consider this different channel of interaction. So firm sides are relevant only for access to export markets. So firms that are larger are more likely to be exporter. Interesting is the role of productivity. It is always positive and statistically significant. The downstream market orientation obviously is positive correlated with the access to export market. And also interesting is the role of long-term foreign linkages that is positive in the access to export market. So when we go in more detail trying to explain which channels of interaction make firms winner or loser, we see that the characteristics of the firms play a different role in explaining the results. We also in this case, we add the destination countries covariates. And in this case, we see that the results are more homogeneous across the different channels of interaction we are considering. So having a huge manufacturing base is always is positive, and in the market demand it's quite obvious, while is negative when we consider the access to finance and the access to export market. The quality of business's environment is always positive and statistically significant. Quite interesting is the results about corruption that, as you can see in 3 out of 4 channels we are considering is negative. This result is quite counterintuitive, but we can try to explain these results considering that in a countries where the level of corruption is higher, the firms can be beneficial from having this relationship with multinational firms because they trust them, and so they are, they receive the sort of guarantee from this kind of contract, even in an environment that is quite corrupted. The last research question is, given these results, so we can have firms that self-declare as winner or loser from the presence of multinational enterprise in their own market. The second step of the analysis is, which kind of reaction these firms start to have to react to the presence of multinational firms. In this sense, we can have the same reaction for firms that are winner, or is different for firms that are loser. And this is important because in this step of the analysis, we are considering this dynamic effect that are the effect more important to understand if the presence of FDI in the host countries generate a structural changing in this country. So this is not the first effect they can have, positive or negative, on the domestic firms, but try to explain how these firms react to the presence of this FDI inflows in their countries. So we have different type of reaction strategies, and we consider this strategy for all the firms together and for winners and losers, so firms that self-declare as winners or losers. As you can see, the strategy more commonly used is a sort of imitation strategy. So you can, these firms decide to produce similar products or to adopt similar production technology or adopt similar marketing strategies and methods. And in this case, the production of similar products is the strategic reaction chosen mainly by winners. So how we can interpret this result? We can interpret these results thinking about the probability that these firms are, the time is over. Okay, probably you can have some question on that. So I want to focus these last 2 minutes on the no strategic reaction. As you can see, and how is expected, the losers are the firms that have no strategic reaction to the presence of the multinational enterprise in their home countries. And this is an aspect that, in our point of view, is important in terms of policy implication. Concluding remarks, we have strong evidence of highly heterogeneous effect of FDI inflows in sub-Saharan Africa. These differences depend both on firm-level characteristics and on the macroeconomic environment of each country. Linkages matters, and FDI attraction policies might be designed in a way that increase the likelihood of generating stable linkages with domestic firms, but a good macroeconomic environment is a fundamental precondition. Thank you.